No one could handle the Vampire King's daughter, until a single mom waitress did the impossible. You're asking me to walk into a lion's den, douse myself in steak sauce, and ask the lion to play nice, Mariana said, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. The man in the shadows didn't laugh. His eyes, the color of oxidized copper, held centuries of exhaustion. No, Miss Crestvale. A lion would be mercy. I am asking you to walk into my house. And my daughter? She does not play. They say she's broken 12 nannies in a month. 13, he corrected softly. The last one is still screaming. Mariana looked at the check on the table. It was enough to save everything. It was enough to die for. When do I start? Mariana Crestvale wiped the counter of the Night Bloom for the 50th time that hour. The neon sign outside flickered, casting a rhythmic, sickly pink glow over the cracked linoleum. It was 3 a.m., the witching hour for the desperate, the drunk, and the damned. Amelia said you were closing early, a voice rasped from the corner booth. Amelia says a lot of things, Mariana muttered, not looking up. Amelia Nightbloom, the owner, had a heart of gold and a head full of bad business decisions. Keeping the diner open for the supernatural overflow from the clubs was one of them. Coffee's cold, Earl. Go home. Earl, a werewolf with a shedding problem and a tab spanning 3 months, grumbled, but slid out of the booth. The bell above the door jingled as he left, letting in a gust of wet, metallic air. Then the silence settled. But it wasn't empty. The air pressure in the diner dropped. The grease on the grill stopped sizzling. Mariana felt the hair on her arm stand up, a primal instinct screaming predator. She slowly lifted her eyes. He was sitting at the counter. He hadn't used the door. He was wearing a suit that cost more than the building, charcoal grey and tailored to a terrifying perfection. He was handsome in the way a cliff edge is handsome, striking, jagged, and promising a fatal fall. His skin was pale, not with sickness, but with the marble stillness of the undying. Edgar Hawkerhurst, the Vampire King of the Eastern Coven. Mariana's grip on the dish rag tightened until her knuckles turned white. She had a 5-year-old son, Leo, sleeping at a neighbor's. She had bills that were 2 weeks late. She didn't have time for royalty. Kitchen's closed, she said. Her voice was flat. Edgar looked at her. His gaze felt physical, like a thumb pressing against her throat. I'm not hungry. Then you're loitering. Buy a coffee or get out. From the shadows of the kitchen, the cook dropped a pan. A vampire king did not get told to get out. Edgar didn't blink. A slow, terrifying smile ghosted his lips. It wasn't friendly, it was intrigued. You smell of sour milk, cheap detergent and fear, Edgar said, his voice a low baritone that vibrated through the countertop. But you speak like a queen. I speak like a woman who's been on her feet for 12 hours, Mariana snapped, grabbing the coffee pot. She poured a mug of the sludge and slammed it down in front of him. Black liquid sloshed over the rim. $1.50. Edgar stared at the mug, then back at her. I have a proposition, Mariana. She froze. He knew her name. Of course he did. I don't do those kinds of jobs. I'm a waitress. I don't need a mistress. I have plenty, he said dismissively, waving a hand. I need a handler. A handler? For what? A hellhound? For my daughter. Rosalind. Mariana laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I've heard the stories. Rosalind Greycourt, the Princess of Tantrums. I heard she telekinetically threw a grand piano at the last governess, because the tea was lukewarm. It was actually a harpsichord, Edgar corrected, his face remaining impassive. And it was because the governess looked at her with pity. Rosalind hates pity. Pass. Mariana turned to the cash register. I have a son. I need to come home to him in one piece. Edgar reached into his jacket and pulled out a check. He placed it on the counter, face down. He slid it across the formica through a puddle of coffee. "This clears your debts," Edgar said softly. "It pays for your son's tuition at St. Jude's. It buys you a house in a zip code where the windows don't have bars. 6 months. That is all I ask." Mariana stared at the paper. The water damage on the ceiling above them dripped, a steady plink, plink, plink. She thought of Leo's cough that wouldn't go away because their apartment had mold. She thought of the eviction notice in her purse. "Why me?" she whispered. You could hire a witch, a sorcerer, a demon." "I have," Edgar said, his eyes darkening, shifting from copper to a bleeding crimson. "They all try to control her. They use magic. They use force. And she breaks them. I watched you tonight, Mariana. A drunk lycanthrope tried to grab your wrist. You didn't scream. You didn't fight. You stepped on his instep and poured ice water in his lap. You are practical. You are numb to the monsters." Mariana looked at the check. She flipped it over. The number made her breath hitch. "If she hurts me," Mariana said, meeting his red gaze, "I sue you for every penny in your vault." Edgar stood up. The diner seemed to shrink around him. "If she hurts you, Miss Crestvale," he said, turning to the door, "money will be the least of your concerns. Be at Moorhaven by sunset tomorrow." As Edgar vanished into the rain, Mariana looked down at the mug he had touched. The ceramic was cracked down the middle, not from force, but from cold. The coffee inside was frozen solid. He hadn't been testing her bravery. He had been restraining his own temper the entire time. Moorhaven sat on a cliff overlooking the churning grey ocean, a monstrosity of Gothic architecture, gargoyles, and black iron. It looked less like a home and more like a mausoleum for giants. Mariana's beat-up sedan chugged up the winding driveway, looking comically out of place against the manicured hedges that were likely trimmed by invisible servants. She parked next to a sleek armored limousine. She took a breath, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, tired eyes, messy bun, cheap blazer, and stepped out. The massive oak doors opened before she could knock. Standing there was a man who looked like he had been starched into existence. Benedict Frostmore, the king's steward. He was tall, thin, and wore a monocle that wasn't ironic. "You are late," Benedict said. His voice was like dry leaves skittering on the pavement. "I'm on time." Mariana checked her watch. The GPS got confused by the fog. "The fog is intended to confuse," Benedict sniffed. "Follow me. Do not touch the artifacts. Do not make eye contact with the portraits. And for the love of the ancestors, do not bleed." "I'll try to keep my fluids to myself," Mariana muttered, hoisting her duffel bag. The interior of Moorhaven was breathtakingly cold, not just in temperature but in spirit. The hallways were vast, lit by floating candelabras. Shadows seemed to detach themselves from the walls and watch her pass. "His Majesty is resting," Benedict intoned, leading her up a grand staircase that spiraled into darkness. "You will meet the Lady Rosalind immediately. She is anticipating your arrival." Anticipating like a child waits for Santa, or like a shark waits for a surfer? Benedict stopped. He turned to her, and for a second the human mask slipped, revealing a flash of sharp fangs. "Lady Rosalind is unique, Miss Crestvale. She is of mixed blood. The king's strength, but her mother's volatility. She is not a child. She is 17, but her power has arrested her emotional development. She is a storm in a jar." "Great," Mariana said, tightening her grip on her bag. "I'm good with storms." They reached a set of double doors at the end of the east wing. The wood was scorched, as if burned from the inside out. Heavy iron chains draped across the handles, currently unlocked. "I will wait here," Benedict said, taking a step back. "Good luck." Mariana pushed the doors open. The room was massive, A princess's bedroom turned war zone. The canopy bed was shredded. A vanity mirror was smashed, the shards floating in mid-air, rotating slowly like a deadly solar system. In the center of the room, sitting on a velvet chaise lounge, was a girl. Rosalind Greycourt was hauntingly beautiful, with her father's pale skin and hair like spun obsidian. She wore a tattered silk nightgown. She was painting her nails black, seemingly ignoring the swirling vortex of glass around her. "You smell like French fries," Rosalind said, without looking up. "And you look like you need a broom," Mariana replied, stepping into the room. She didn't duck. She didn't flinch at the flying glass. She walked straight to the window and threw the heavy curtains open. Sunlight, filtered and weak through the storm clouds, but still light, flooded in. Rosalind hissed, the glass shards dropping to the floor with a deafening crash. "Close it!" Rosalind shrieked, her eyes turning pitch black. The air pressure in the room plummeted. A heavy perfume bottle launched itself from the dresser, aiming straight for Mariana's head. Mariana didn't use magic. She used reflexes honed by dodging toys thrown by a toddler. She caught the bottle one-handed, inches from her face. She set it down on a side table with a click. "If you break the Chanel, you're paying for it out of your allowance," Mariana said calmly. Rosalind froze. She stared at Mariana, her mouth slightly open. The telekinetic wind died down. "Do you know who I am?" "I know you're a teenager making a mess because you're bored," Mariana said, picking up a stray pillow and tossing it back onto the bed. "I'm Mariana. I'm here to make sure you eat something other than raw steak, and to keep you from destroying the historical architecture." Rosalind stood up. She floated a few inches off the ground, her hair writhing like snakes. "I could crush your heart with a thought." "You could," Mariana agreed, pulling a chocolate bar from her pocket and unwrapping it. She took a bite, then offered the other half to the floating vampire. "But then who would you play with? The stiff in the hallway is boring, and your dad is busy." Rosalind eyed the chocolate. The darkness in her eyes receded, revealing a glimpse of lonely, violet irises. She lowered herself to the floor. "Is that hazelnut?" Rosalind asked, her voice small. "Almond," Mariana lied. It was cheap nougat. Rosalind snatched it. She took a bite, chewing aggressively. The last nanny begged for her life. "I don't beg," Mariana said, starting to pick up the glass shards. "I negotiate. Now, help me clean this up, or I'm telling Benedict to cancel the Wi-Fi." As they cleaned, Mariana cut her finger on a shard of mirror. A drop of bright red blood welled up. Rosalind froze. Her nostrils flared. The predator instinct took over, but instead of attacking, Rosalind's eyes rolled back, and she collapsed, seizing violently. The scent of Mariana's blood didn't trigger hunger. It triggered an allergic, magical shock. Mariana wasn't just human. Her blood was wrong. Chaos. That was the only word for the infirmary at Moorhaven. Rosalind was thrashing on the metal table, held down by two large guards, Cedric Longford and a hulking gargoyle. Her skin was burning, steam rising from her pores. "What did you do to her?" Edgar roared. He had materialized out of thin air, wearing a silk dressing gown that did nothing to soften the terrifying rage radiating off him. He shoved Cedric aside and pinned Rosalind's shoulders, his hands glowing with healing magic that fizzled and died against her skin. I cut my finger," Mariana stammered, standing in the doorway. She was clutching a towel, her face pale. She smelled it and just dropped. "Get her out," Benedict hissed, pointing a shaking finger at Mariana. "She is poison." "No," Edgar barked. "Look at the readings." Odette Fairhill, the Coven's physician, was scanning Rosalind with a glowing crystal. "Sire, the seizures are stopping. Her fever is breaking." "But look at the energy signature." Edgar looked. The angry, chaotic purple aura that usually surrounded his daughter was receding, replaced by a soft, golden pulse. Rosalind stopped screaming. She went limp, her breathing turning ragged but deep. She was asleep. For the first time in months, she was truly asleep. Edgar turned slowly to face Mariana. The room went deathly silent. Cedric's hand drifted to the sword at his hip. "Come here," Edgar commanded. Mariana swallowed hard. Every instinct told her to run. But she thought of Leo. She walked forward, her sneakers squeaking on the sterile floor. "Give me your hand." She extended her hand. The cut on her index finger was still sluggishly bleeding. Edgar took her hand. His skin was ice cold. Hers was feverishly warm. He didn't bite her. He brought her finger up to his face, inhaling deeply. His eyes widened, pupils blowing wide. "Vervain?" he whispered. "No." "Wolfsbane?" "No." He looked at her, truly looked at her, as if trying to solve a riddle written in her DNA. "You have no magic," Edgar said, confused. "You are completely mundane. Yet your blood just neutralized a curse that has been eating my daughter alive for 50 years. I take a multivitamin," Mariana offered weakly. Edgar didn't smile. He released her hand, but he didn't step back. He was too close. She could smell him. Rain, expensive scotch, and ozone. "You are not leaving," Edgar stated. "I wasn't planning to. I need the paycheck." "This is no longer about the paycheck," Edgar said, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. He turned to Cedric. "Double the guard on the perimeter. No one enters. No one leaves. Especially not Miss Crestvale." "Am I a prisoner?" Mariana demanded, finding her spine. "You are the antidote," Edgar said. He reached out and, with a gentleness that was terrifying, brushed a stray hair from her forehead. "And I keep my medicine close." Mariana pulled back, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I'm here to babysit, Your Majesty, not to be a lab rat." "You are here to save her," Edgar said, turning back to his sleeping daughter. He looked suddenly old, the weight of the crown crushing him. "Everyone else makes her worse. You made her quiet." He walked to the door. "Cedric, escort Miss Crestvale to the royal suite. The servants' quarters are no longer suitable." "The royal suite is next to yours, sire," Cedric noted, his jaw tight. "I know," Edgar said. He paused at the door, looking back at Mariana. "Sleep well, Mariana. Tomorrow, we find out what you are." Alone in the opulent suite, Mariana went to the bathroom to wash her face. She looked at the cut on her finger. It was already gone. Not scabbed over. Gone, as if it never happened. She stared at her reflection. Her eyes, usually a warm brown, flashed gold for a split second. Mariana gripped the sink. She had lied to Edgar. She knew exactly why her blood was different. She just didn't know he would figure it out so fast. She wasn't just a mum. She was a descendant of the hunters, and she was currently the king's only hope. The morning sun at Moorhaven didn't sparkle. It intruded. It pushed through the heavy velvet drapes of the royal suite like a grey, unwelcome guest. Mariana woke up with a gasp, her hand instinctively reaching for an alarm clock that wasn't there. Instead, her fingers brushed against 800 thread-count Egyptian cotton, the memory of the previous night, the blood, the seizure, the terrifying gold flash in her own eyes, crashed down on her. She scrambled out of the massive four-poster bed and ran to the bathroom. The mirror was framed in silver bones. She leaned in close, examining her irises. Brown. Just muddy, tired brown. "Get it together, Mariana," she whispered, splashing freezing water on her face. "You're stressed. You're hallucinating. You are a waitress from Queens, not a glowing superhero." She needed to leave. She needed to get Leo. She marched to the heavy oak doors of the suite and yanked the handle. Locked. Seriously? She muttered. She pounded on the wood. Hey, open up! This is kidnapping! The lock clicked, and the door swung open smoothly. Standing there was Benedict, holding a tray with a teapot and a garment bag. It is not kidnapping, Miss Crestvale, Benedict said, stepping past her as if he glided on wheels. It is protective custody, and please lower your voice. The castle acoustics are designed to carry the screams of torture victims. Your shouting is quite piercing. I want my son, Mariana said, ignoring the tea. Edgar said, His Majesty, Benedict corrected, hanging the garment bag on the wardrobe. And the boy is safe. He is currently in the West Wing solarium, eating pancakes with the cook. He asked for blueberry. We only had bloodberries, but the cook improvised. Mariana's knees went weak with relief, followed instantly by a surge of anger. You brought him here? To a castle full of vampires? The king thought it best not to separate a mother from her child, Benedict said, turning to her. His monocle glinted, especially a mother whose blood is currently the only thing preventing Lady Rosalind from turning this coastline into a crater. He gestured to the garment bag. The king requests your presence for brunch. Your current attire, denim and despair, is unsuitable. Mariana unzipped the bag. Inside was a dress of soft, dove-grey wool, tailored and modest, but clearly expensive. It looked like something a governess would wear in a Gothic romance novel, which, she realized with a sinking heart, was exactly the genre she was living in. 20 minutes later, Mariana walked into the dining hall. It was a cavernous room with a table long enough to land a plane on. At the far end sat Edgar, reading a newspaper that looked to be printed on parchment. To his right sat Rosalind. The girl looked human. The chaotic energy was gone. She was eating toast, cutting it into tiny, precise squares. Mummy! Leo slid off a chair and ran toward her. Mariana dropped to her knees and caught him, burying her face in his neck. He smelled like syrup and soap. Are you okay? She asked frantically, checking him for bite marks. This place is cool. Leo beamed, holding up a toy soldier made of actual solid lead. Mr. Edgar has a room full of swords, and the nice butler showed me a secret passage behind a bookshelf. Mariana looked up at Edgar. He lowered the paper. He looked tired, the shadows under his eyes stark against his pale skin. But his expression was unreadable. I trust the accommodations are to your liking? Edgar asked. The door was locked, Mariana said, standing up and keeping a protective hand on Leo's shoulder. For your safety, Edgar said. My kind can be territorial. Until my staff understands your position here, I prefer you not wander. And what is my position? Mariana challenged. Am I a prisoner? A blood bag? Rosalind stopped cutting her toast. She looked up. Her eyes were violet again, clear and sharp. You're the anchor, Rosalind said softly. The room went quiet. Edgar looked at his daughter, surprised. I can hear it, Rosalind whispered, looking at Mariana. Your heart. It doesn't sound like the others. It's slow, heavy. It pushes the noise away. Edgar stood up and walked to Mariana. He moved with that predator grace, silent and fluid. He stopped inches from her. Leo, oblivious to the danger, tugged on Edgar's expensive suit jacket. Mr. King, can we see the gargoyles now? Leo asked. Edgar looked down at the boy. For a second, Mariana saw something soften in the king's face, a flicker of humanity buried under centuries of ice. In a moment, Leonard, Edgar said. He looked at Mariana. My daughter is right. You anchor her. The magic that tears her apart. It calms when you are near. I do not know what you are, Mariana, but I know I cannot let you go. I have a life, Mariana said, though her voice wavered. I have a job at the diner. I bought the diner, Edgar said simply. I gave Ms. Nightbloom a generous retirement package. She is currently on a cruise to the Bahamas. Mariana's jaw dropped. You bought my job? I bought your time, Edgar corrected. Name your price, Mariana. Anything. I have wealth that you cannot imagine. I can give your son a future where he never has to work, never has to fear, never has to suffer. All you have to do is stay. For how long? Until she is cured, or until she learns to control it? Mariana looked at Rosalind. The girl looked so small in the giant chair. She looked lonely. Mariana looked at Leo, who was staring at the ceiling frescoes with wonder. She thought of their mouldy apartment, the late notices, the constant fear of not being enough. I want a contract, Mariana said, hardening her gaze. In writing, no biting, no draining. Leo is off limits to everyone, and I get weekends off. Edgar's lips curled into a faint, genuine smile. Weekends might be difficult during a siege, but I will endeavor to be flexible. Siege? Mariana blinked. Before Edgar could answer, the stained glass window high above them shattered. A black arrow, fletched with crow feathers, slammed into the table, vibrating with dark energy. It landed exactly where Mariana's hand had been seconds before. Attached to the shaft was a note written in silver ink. Give us the abomination, or the house of Hawkhurst burns. Edgar didn't flinch. He just looked at the arrow, his eyes turning a bleeding, violent red. It seems, he said calmly. The weekend has been cancelled. The attack hadn't been a full assault, just a warning. But the atmosphere at Moorhaven shifted instantly from creepy castle to militarized fortress. Iron shutters slammed down over every window. Guards in tactical gear and medieval chainmail patrolled the corridors. Benedict began handing out wooden stakes to the housekeeping staff, along with the towels. Mariana found herself in the library, not hiding, but working. Elbows off the table, Rosalind, and stop levitating the soup spoon. Rosalind groaned, dropping the silver spoon back into the bowl with a splash. This is stupid. Why do I need to learn etiquette when we're about to be murdered by the council? Because if you panic, you explode, Mariana said, not looking up from the book she was reading. And if you focus on the small things, like holding a spoon, you don't focus on the chaos in your blood. It's called grounding. It's called boring, Rosaline muttered, but she picked up the spoon manually. They had been at this for 3 days. Edgar was constantly in war meetings with his generals, leaving Mariana to manage the Princess of Doom. Surprisingly, it was working. Rosalind responded to Mariana's dry sarcasm better than she ever had to fear or pity. So, Rosalind asked, eyeing Mariana, are you and my dad, like, a thing? Mariana choked on her tea. What? No, he's my boss. Ideally, he's my temporary boss. He looks at you, Rosalind observed, tearing a bread roll apart with unnecessary violence. He usually looks through people, but he watches you. He smells your hair when you walk by. It's gross. He's smelling my fear, Mariana said, closing her book. It was a history of the region. She had been looking for mentions of her family name. Crestvale. Nothing. Or maybe he smells the garlic bread. You're not afraid of him, Rosalind said quietly. That's why he likes you. Everyone is afraid of the king, even Benedict. I'm terrified of him, Mariana corrected. I just hide it well. Mothers are good at acting. The heavy doors opened, and Edgar strode in. He was wearing armor, actual, black leather armor with silver plating. He looked like a god of war, and Mariana's traitorous heart skipped a beat. The council has surrounded the perimeter, Edgar announced, his voice tight. They have brought a sun caller. They intend to burn the mist away at dawn. Rosalind went pale. They're going to expose us? They want to force a surrender, Edgar said. He looked at Mariana. I need to move you. The library is on the outer wall. It's not safe. "Where are we going?" Mariana asked, standing up. "The crypts," Edgar said. "They are shielded against solar magic." "Oh, goody," Mariana deadpanned. "The crypts. My favorite vacation spot." As they moved through the castle, the tension was palpable. The air smelled of ozone and burning magic. Leo was strapped to Mariana's back in a hiking carrier she had found, sleeping soundly thanks to a mild herbal tea Benedict had prepared. They reached the entrance to the lower levels when a section of the wall to their right exploded. Masonry flew. Dust billowed. 2 figures emerged from the hole, vampires but feral ones. Their eyes were yellow, their skin cracked. Mercenaries. "Rosalind, get back!" Edgar roared. He drew a sword from his hip, a blade of pure darkness that seemed to absorb the light. He engaged the first attacker with a speed Mariana couldn't track. It was a blur of violence, but the second vampire, a massive brute with jagged teeth, ignored the king and lunged straight for Rosalind. Rosalind screamed. The air around her began to vibrate, the chaos magic building up to a detonation that would bring the ceiling down on all of them. "No!" Mariana shouted. "Rosalind, focus! Look at me!" She stepped between the girl and the monster. It was suicide. She knew it, but she moved without thinking. As the vampire lunged, claws extended for her throat, Mariana didn't scream. She stepped into the attack. She grabbed a heavy iron candelabra from a side table, but she didn't swing it like a club. She spun, using the momentum to drive the pointed base of the stand upward, aiming for the soft spot under the vampire's ribcage, directly into the heart. It was a perfect strike. Surgical. The vampire gasped, his momentum halted. He looked down at the iron spike protruding from his chest, then up at Mariana with confused, dying eyes. He crumbled into ash. Silence. Edgar, having decapitated his opponent, turned around. He froze. He looked at the pile of ash at Mariana's feet. He looked at the iron stand in her hand. Then he looked at her. Mariana was panting, her hair wild. Her hands were shaking now, but they hadn't been shaking when she struck. "I took a self-defense class at the Y," she said, her voice high and unconvincing. Edgar walked toward her. He didn't look angry. He looked horrified and awestruck. "That strike," Edgar whispered. "The upward thrust. That is not taught at the YMCA, Mariana. I got lucky. That is a hunter's killing blow," Edgar said, stepping closer. "The Order of the Silver Dawn. They were wiped out 200 years ago." He reached out, grabbing her wrist. He pushed up the sleeve of her dress. There, on the inside of her forearm, previously hidden by cheap makeup that had sweated off in the heat of the fight, was a birthmark. It was faint, shaped like a crescent moon intersected by a sword. Rosalind gasped. The mark. Edgar stared at it. His thumb traced the shape. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through Mariana that had nothing to do with magic. "You are not just a waitress," Edgar said, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and something else. "You are the enemy." Mariana pulled her arm back. "I didn't know," she cried. "My grandmother told me it was a deform." She stopped. A low, rhythmic thumping sound filled the hallway. Thump, 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 thump. It was coming from Leo's backpack. Mariana froze. Edgar froze. Leo woke up, rubbing his eyes. "Mummy? Why is my chest glowing?" Mariana unbuckled the carrier and turned Leo around. His little t-shirt was illuminated from the inside. A golden light was pulsing from his chest, perfectly in sync with the heartbeat of the castle itself. "He's not just a hunter," Rosalind whispered, backing away. "He's a battery." The revelation that her 5-year-old son was a glowing beacon of supernatural energy was, frankly, the last straw for Mariana. "Don't touch him," she snapped, slapping Edgar's hand away as he reached for Leo. "He is resonating with the ley lines," Edgar said, his eyes wide. "Mariana, Do you understand what this means? The hunters didn't just kill vampires. They stole our magic. They absorbed it. Your bloodline. It's a vessel. He's a child, Mariana shouted, backing against the stone wall. He's not a vessel. He's a kindergartner who likes dinosaurs. He is the reason Rosalind is calm, Edgar realized. It wasn't just you. It was him. His presence absorbs the excess chaos. He is a natural siphon. Leo looked down at his glowing chest. I'm like Iron Man. Yes, baby, exactly like Iron Man, Mariana said, her voice shaking. But we need to turn the light off now, okay? Can you try to dim it? I don't know how, Leo said. We have to move, Benedict interrupted, appearing from the shadows with a bloodied sword. The breach in the wall has alerted the main force. They are coming. They ran. The crypts were not the damp, dirt-floored dungeons Mariana expected. They were a subterranean cathedral of black marble and silver veins. In the center was a massive sarcophagus, and around it, a circle of runes. Stay here, Edgar commanded, pushing them into the circle. The runes will mask the boy's signature. Where are you going? Mariana grabbed his arm. The leather of his armor was cold, but his skin beneath it was burning hot. I am going to end this, Edgar said. The council fears Rosalind because they think she will destroy the world. If they see the boy, if they see a hunter who can absorb magic, they will burn the entire world to get to him. He looked at her, his red eyes searching hers. I will not let them touch him. Or you. Edgar, she said. It was the first time she used his name without a title. He leaned in. For a moment, she thought he would kiss her. The air between them crackled, charged with the forbidden friction of predator and prey, king and commoner. If I do not return, Edgar whispered, pressing a heavy iron key into her hand. Take the tunnel behind the statue of the weeping angel. It leads to the cliffs. There is a boat. Go. He turned and vanished into the darkness, a shadow made of blades and vengeance. Mariana stood in the silence of the crypt, clutching the key. Rosalind was sitting on the floor, holding Leo's hand. The glowing in Leo's chest had dimmed to a soft hum. He's going to die, Rosalind said dully. There are too many of them. No, Mariana said. She looked at the birthmark on her arm. She looked at the iron key. Then she looked at the rack of ceremonial weapons lining the crypt walls. He's not going to die, Mariana said, walking over to the rack. She picked up a silver longsword. It was heavy, but it felt right. It felt balanced. Her muscles remembered movements she had never practiced. What are you doing? Rosalind asked. I'm tired of running, Mariana said. She turned to the teenage vampire. Can you open the main doors? Are you crazy? That's where the army is. Exactly, Mariana said. Your dad is fighting them alone. He needs a distraction, and he needs a partner. You're human, Rosalind argued. You'll break. Mariana's eyes flashed. Not brown, not hazel, but a brilliant, piercing gold. The same gold that pulsed in her son's chest. I'm a mother, Mariana said, testing the edge of the blade. And I'm a Crestvale. Apparently that means I don't break. I hunt. She looked at Rosalind. Protect Leo. Keep the circle closed. If anyone comes in here who isn't me or your father, you turn them into paste. Understand? Rosalind nodded, eyes wide. Yes, Mom. Mariana took a deep breath. She ran toward the tunnel Edgar had taken, the sword dragging sparks against the stone floor. She emerged into the courtyard, just as the battle was turning. Edgar was surrounded. 10 vampires, elite guards of the council, had him circled. He was bleeding, silver blood that hissed when it hit the ground. The leader of the council, a vampire with white hair and a face like a dried apple, raised a spear. Yield, King of Rot, the leader shouted, and surrender the girl. Never, Edgar snarled, though he swayed on his feet. Mariana didn't announce her presence. She didn't yell a battle cry. She simply sprinted. She hit the circle from the flank. The first guard didn't even see her. The silver sword sheared through his armor like paper. He dissolved into dust before his helmet hit the ground. The second guard turned, hissing. Mariana slid under his swing, slashing his hamstrings, then rising to drive the hilt of the sword into his jaw. She stood beside Edgar. Back to back. Edgar looked at her, blood running down his face. "I told you to run." "I don't take orders from men who wear capes," Mariana retorted, raising her sword. "And you look like you needed a waitress." Edgar laughed, a wet, raspy sound. "You are insane." "I'm a single mum," Mariana said, as the remaining 8 vampires closed in. "Same thing." As the council leader lunged, Mariana raised her hand to block, forgetting she wasn't holding a shield. But the blow never landed. A blast of pure, golden light erupted from her palm, throwing the council leader across the courtyard. It wasn't hunter magic. It wasn't vampire magic. It was light. Mariana stared at her hand. She wasn't just a hunter. The Crestvales weren't just killers. They were paladins. And for the first time in centuries, the darkness of Moorhaven was pierced by the sun, coming from the hands of a waitress. The courtyard of Moorhaven smelled of ozone and victory, but mostly it smelled of burnt ego. The council's elite guard had fled the moment Mariana's hand erupted with the brilliance of a supernova. Now the silence was heavy, broken only by the distant crash of the ocean against the cliffs. Edgar slumped against the stone fountain. The silver wound in his side was not closing. His immortality was fighting a losing battle against the consecrated steel of the council's weapons. "You're glowing," Edgar rasped, looking up at Mariana. His voice was weak, but his eyes were blazing with that same intense fascination he'd shown in the diner. Mariana looked at her hands. The golden light had faded to a soft, rhythmic shimmer under her skin. She felt exhausted, but also alive in a way she never had before. "I'm a flashlight," she said, dropping the heavy sword. She knelt beside him. "Let me see the wound." "Don't touch it," Edgar warned, grabbing her wrist with his cold hand. "You are a paladin, Mariana. Your touch is holy fire to my kind. You could kill me by accident." "I don't do accidents anymore," she whispered. She didn't pull away. Instead, she placed her glowing hand directly over the gash in his armor. Edgar hissed, his back arching in anticipation of pain. But the smoke that rose wasn't burning flesh. It was the dark magic of the poison evaporating. The light from her hand turned liquid, seeping into the wound. The skin knit together. The black veins around the cut turned pink, then pale again. Edgar stared at her, his breath hitching. "It doesn't burn." "Why doesn't it burn?" "Maybe because I don't want it to," Mariana said softly. She met his gaze. The red in his irises had softened to a deep, warm mahogany. Around them, the castle staff began to emerge. Benedict, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, walked into the courtyard. He stopped when he saw them, the Vampire King and the Waitress, bathed in moonlight and magic, looking at each other like they were the only 2 people on Earth. "Your Majesty," Benedict cleared his throat. "The perimeter is secure. Lady Rosalind and the boy are safe in the crypts." Edgar didn't look away from Mariana. "Good." He stood up, pulling Mariana with him. For a moment, the distance between them vanished. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You saved my kingdom," he murmured. "You saved my life, and you are everything I was taught to hate." "I'm also still technically your employee," Mariana said, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Does this mean I get a raise?" Edgar laughed, a genuine rich sound that seemed to chase the shadows away. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. You get half the vault, Mariana. You get the whole damn castle if you want it. But peace at Moorhaven was always a fleeting guest. Later that night, Mariana sat on the balcony of the royal suite, watching the fog roll in. Leo was asleep in the massive bed behind her, clutching his lead soldier. Rosalind sat on the railing, swinging her legs over 100-foot drop. "You're in love with him," Rosalind stated. It wasn't a question. "I'm in survival mode with him," Mariana corrected, sipping a mug of hot cocoa Benedict had brought. "There's a difference." "No, there isn't," Rosalind said. "Survival creates the strongest bonds. That's why I liked the last nanny, until she tried to exorcise me." "I promise not to exorcise you," Mariana smiled. Rosalind hopped down. "My dad is complicated. He's lived a long time. He's forgotten how to be soft. But with you, he's different. He's scared." "Scared of what?" "Of losing," Rosalind said, her face serious. "He's never had anything he couldn't protect with a sword, but he can't protect you from yourself. That light inside you. It's a beacon, Mariana. Every monster within 1,000 miles can see it now." As if on cue, the heavy oak door to the suite burst open. It wasn't an assassin. It was Benedict. But he wasn't holding a tea tray. He was holding a sword, and his eyes, usually a polite grey, were swirled with a milky, hypnotic white. He had been compelled. "I am sorry, Miss Crestvale," Benedict said, his voice monotone. "The master requires the battery." Behind him, standing in the shadows of the hallway, was the one person they had trusted to guard the gate. Cedric Longford. And he wasn't smiling. "Cedric?" Mariana stood up, putting herself between the door and the bed where Leo slept. "What are you doing?" Cedric stepped into the light. The loyal guard, the man who had eaten pancakes with Leo, was gone. In his place was a creature of cold ambition. He held a device in his hand, a dark crystal that pulsated with a sick, green rhythm. "The council is weak," Cedric said, his voice smooth. "They want to kill the king. I want to be the king. And to do that, I need more than royal blood. I need a power source." He looked past Mariana at the sleeping boy. "Don't you dare," Rosalind hissed. Her hair began to float. The room started to shake. "I will rip you apart, Cedric." "No, you won't," Cedric said, calmly. He crushed the crystal in his hand. A shockwave of green energy blasted through the room. It didn't hit Mariana or Rosalind physically. It hit their magic. Rosalind gasped and fell to her knees, her powers short-circuiting. Mariana felt the light inside her dim, suppressed by a suffocating weight. Benedict, still under the trance, lunged. Mariana grabbed a heavy brass lamp and swung it, knocking the sword from the butler's hand, but Cedric was faster. He moved with vampire speed, blurring past her. He grabbed Leo. "Mummy!" Leo screamed, waking up as he was hauled into the air. "No!" Mariana screamed. She tried to summon the light, the paladin fire, but it was just a spark. The dampening field was too strong. Edgar appeared in the doorway, alerted by the scream. He took in the scene instantly, the betrayed butler, his daughter on the floor, his general holding the child. "Cedric," Edgar said, his voice deadly quiet. "Put him down, and I will grant you a quick death." "I think not, sire," Cedric sneered. He held a dagger to Leo's glowing chest. "One step, and the boy bleeds. You know what happens if a vessel is punctured while fully charged? He goes nuclear. We all die." Edgar froze. For the first time, the king looked helpless. "I'm leaving," Cedric announced, backing toward the balcony. "The boy comes with me to the Iron Spire. If you want him back, come alone, Edgar. No paladins, no armies. Just you and me." "Take me instead," Mariana begged, stepping forward. "I'm the source. He's just a child." "He is raw energy," Cedric corrected. "You are refined, harder to control. He is a blank slate." Cedric jumped. He didn't fall. A sleek black helicopter, unmarked and silent, rose from the fog below the cliff. Cedric landed on the skid, threw Leo inside, and the machine banked away into the night. "Leo!" Mariana screamed, running to the railing. She watched the tail lights disappear into the storm. She turned around. Edgar was kneeling beside Rosalind, helping her up. Benedict had collapsed, the trance broken, weeping with shame. "He has my son," Mariana said. Her voice was ice. She wasn't crying. She was beyond tears. "We will get him back," Edgar said. "The Iron Spire is an old fortress. It's a trap. He wants to drain my power and combine it with the boys to become a god." "He said come alone," Rosalind said weakly. "He lied," Mariana said. She walked to the wardrobe and ripped the door open. She pulled out the tactical gear Edgar had tried to give her days ago. She threw the grey dress on the floor. "We are not going alone," Mariana said, strapping a holster to her thigh. "Edgar, you're the tank. Rosalind, you're the artillery." "And you?" Edgar asked, watching her transform from a frantic mother into a warrior. "I'm the mother," Mariana said, picking up the silver sword. "I'm the one who ends him." As they prepared to leave, Benedict grabbed Mariana's arm. "Ms. Crestvale," he stuttered. "The crystal, it didn't just dampen your magic, it inverted it. Look." Mariana looked in the mirror. Her reflection wasn't glowing gold anymore. It was shadowed. Her eyes were pitch black. The suppression device hadn't turned off her paladin side. It had triggered the other half of her bloodline, the half the hunters never talked about. The Shadow Walkers. She didn't just bring the light, she could command the dark. The Iron Spire was a needle of black rock piercing the sky, surrounded by a churning ocean. It was a place where hope went to die. Cedric stood on the rooftop platform, the wind whipping his coat. Leo was strapped to a copper altar in the center, crying silently. Wires ran from the altar to a massive machine that hummed with a sick, throbbing rhythm. "It's almost time, little one," Cedric smiled. "Don't worry, it won't hurt. You'll just fade." "My mum is gonna get you," Leo sniffled. "Your mum is a waitress," Cedric laughed. Crash! The heavy steel doors of the roof flew off their hinges, slamming into the far wall. Edgar stood there, his sword drawn. Shift supervisor, actually. Cedric's mercenaries swarmed. 20 of them. "Kill him!" Cedric ordered. Edgar moved. He was a whirlwind of steel and shadow. But there were too many. They overwhelmed him, pinning him down with nets made of silver mesh. "Predictable," Cedric sighed. "You always were too noble for your own good, my king." "Who said I came alone?" Edgar grinned, blood on his teeth. Above them, the sky tore open. Rosalind didn't use a door. She dropped from the clouds, levitating on a storm of her own making. She unleashed a scream of pure sonic fury that shattered the mercenaries' eardrums and sent 10 of them flying off the tower. "Get the girl!" Cedric screamed, activating the machine. The wires on Leo glowed hot. "Mummy!" Leo cried out in pain. From the shadows behind the machine, a figure emerged. It wasn't glowing gold. It was wrapped in darkness so deep it looked like a hole in reality. Mariana stepped out of the void. She had shadow-walked right through the defenses. She didn't have a sword. She didn't need one. She walked toward Cedric. The mercenaries tried to stop her, but she simply waved a hand, and the shadows on the ground rose up, turning into tendrils that grabbed their ankles and pulled them down. "What are you?" Cedric gasped, backing away. "I'm the balance," Mariana said. Her voice echoed, layered with a power that wasn't human. She reached the altar. She placed one hand on Leo's chest. The golden light of the paladin flared, protecting him. She placed her other hand toward Cedric. The black void of the Shadow Walker surged. "You wanted power?" Mariana asked. "Here." She unleashed both. A beam of blinding gold and devouring black spiraled together, hitting Cedric squarely in the chest. It wasn't an attack, it was an overload. Cedric screamed as he was filled with more energy than 1,000 vampire kings could hold. He exploded. Not into gore, but into pure light, dissolving into the atmosphere. The machine died, the wires went cold. Mariana collapsed, the darkness fading from her eyes, leaving them warm brown again. Leo scrambled out of the straps. "Mummy!" Edgar, having shredded the silver net, was there in a second. He caught Mariana before she hit the ground. He pulled Leo into the embrace, covering them both with his cape. Rosalind landed softly beside them, the storm above clearing to reveal a sunrise that painted the world in soft pinks and oranges. "Is he gone?" Leo asked, burying his face in Edgar's coat. "Yes," Edgar said, looking at Mariana with awe. "He's gone. The monster is gone." Mariana looked up at him. She was exhausted, bruised, and unemployed. But she smiled. "You owe me for overtime," she whispered. Edgar kissed her. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a claim. It was a promise. It was the sealing of a pact between light and dark, between the crown and the ordinary. "I will pay you," Edgar whispered against her lips, "for eternity." As they flew back to Moorhaven in the sunrise, Mariana looked at her reflection in the helicopter window. Her birthmark had changed. The sword and moon were gone. In their place was a crown. She hadn't just defeated a traitor. She had unintentionally claimed the right of conquest. By supernatural law, she was now the queen of the Eastern Coven. Edgar saw it too. He just smirked. "Well," he said, "this is going to make the staff meetings interesting." The Nightbloom diner reopened. It looked exactly the same. Neon sign, checkered floors, smell of bacon. But the clientele had upgraded. Vampires in Armani suits sat in booths next to truck drivers. Werewolves behaved themselves, mostly because the new busboy was a gargoyle. Mariana poured coffee for a regular. She wore her uniform, but on her finger was a ring made of black iron and starlight. "Order up!" the cook yelled. Edgar walked out of the kitchen, wearing an apron over his dress shirt. He placed a plate of pancakes in front of a customer with a flourish. "Enjoy," the Vampire King said. Leo sat at the counter, doing his homework, while Rosalind floated a few inches off the ground next to him, helping him with math. "You carried the one wrong," Rosalind pointed out. "Math is hard," Leo sighed. "Ruling a kingdom is hard," Mariana said, walking by and kissing the top of Leo's head. She leaned over the counter and kissed Edgar, ignoring the gasps of a few tourist vampires. "Math is just practice." They had found their rhythm, not in the darkness of the castle, but in the light of the diner. They were a family of monsters and hunters, kings and waitresses, bound not by blood or magic, but by the choice to love the things that scared them. And as for the rest of the world, well, they learned quickly. You don't mess with the king, you don't mess with the princess, and you definitely don't mess with the waitress who serves them. Enjoyed this story? If Mariana and Edgar's journey from enemies to lovers stole your heart, or nearly stopped it, please like this story and share it with your fellow romance readers. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales of supernatural passion, unexpected twists, and love that conquers all. Let me know in the comments. Would you date a vampire king if it meant dealing with his rebellious teenager? See you in the next story.